Good morning, dear educators, dear colleagues from all over the world. You are welcome to our 5th webinar for this year, hosted by Huan Quan Village, the great educational art and culture hub that is already ready to help and serve the mission of education for all our educators. As we all know, we are the missionaries of the sacred mission of education, and the mission of education is the most important mission in the world. And we're very happy to see you today with us. Today with me, and I welcome again Mr. Fuad and Miss Aline Nasim, our two speakers today, two international speakers. We are going to do our best to simplify for you the differentiated classroom. And our today's session is the simplicity of the beyond differentiated classroom. Let me remind you at the beginning of the session that it's going to last around 1 hour 40 minutes. After 1 hour 40 minutes, you can ask all your questions, or you can post your questions via Zoom chat, and we are going to answer them all at the end of the webinar. Please make sure you are all on mute mode so that we can enjoy the webinar. Henry David Thoreau, a great educationist from last century, he said once, "If a man does not keep pace with his companions, perhaps it's because he hears a different drummer. Let him step to the music which he hears, however measured or far away." What does he mean by that? Very simply, if I am a facilitator, as we all know, we are no more teachers, we are facilitators. We facilitate the inquiry and acquisition of knowledge and skills, which is much more difficult than teaching today, because we believe in student-centered classrooms. He means by that, if me as a facilitator, I know how to sing, let's say, songs of Paul Anka, a certain singer, and half of my class, they prefer listening, or they listen always to Celine Dion, and the other half listen to Michael Jackson, for example, and me, I'm singing for them my song, Paul Anka. They will not listen to me. I need to simplify my differentiated techniques in a way to create for them a new singer that is half Michael Jackson, half Celine Dion, and they can hear me and they can listen to me. So that's why, in general, it's always difficult and very difficult for all our facilitators. They always complain, how can I differentiate? Differentiation is very complicated. How can we do it? Most of our facilitators, they cannot apply differentiation, or they have difficulties applying differentiation because the very simple reason, it's not their fault, it's not no one's fault. Our infrastructural system in schools is based to lead a traditional teaching learning environment. That's why it's very difficult for us to differentiate. Today, we are going again to try to show you how can we simplify. We tried this already in many schools. How can we simplify the differentiation process with our two great speakers, Mr. Fuad and Ms. Aline, that we welcome them. In-class differentiation, through providing differentiated teaching activities and resources, has globally not been shown to have much impact on pupils' attainment. Imagine this was said in 2018 by Los Angeles School District Inspection Committee. Why? Is it possible that differentiation is not affecting the students' attainment positively and it's not impacting them? You know why? Let's revisit this quote again. In class differentiation, we don't believe anymore that students must stay in class. We believe that 75% of their time a student must spend outside their classrooms. We believe in Classroom Without Borders. That's why our second webinar was about Classroom Without Borders and how to prepare the infrastructure of those classrooms without borders. Number two, in this statement, providing differentiated teaching activities and resources. Teaching activities, we don't teach anymore. We facilitate, which is much more difficult, because we want our students, for them to discover and acquire the knowledge and the skills, and we need to create the right environment for them to discover and explore and acquire this knowledge and skills. That's why teaching activities will not work in differentiation. Let's see now, today, how can we simplify this differentiation? Number one, if differentiation is complicated for what? Because I am using differentiated teaching strategies. I am forgetting to differentiate outside the classroom. I am trying to differentiate in a non-differentiated school, in a non-differentiated mindset, because I am teaching and not facilitating, because I have a great mentor leadership in the school and not a student-servant leadership. So in order to simplify my differentiation process, in general, my mindset and the mindset of the whole environment of the school must be differentiated. I must think as a whole simple differentiated approach. I must follow, and the school must follow, classroom without borders. I must have in my school a differentiated school. I must facilitate and not teach, and my school must follow a student-servant leadership approach. What do I mean by that? We're going to see that in a later slide now. So in order to simplify, again, my differentiation, I need those 6 pillars. Number one, a student-servant leadership approach. Number two, facilitating and not teaching. Number three, classroom without borders. Number four, classroom curriculum differentiation, big, major, minor ideas timetable, the multi-layered curriculum, one subject core knowledge approach, real-life-based streams education, and mutual collaborative planning. Once I have all this, I will not even feel that I'm differentiating. Differentiation will start automatically, will be initiated automatically. Let's see today how, with different scenarios. Let me remind you, when I say student-servant leadership approach, I mean by that all of us, we are leaders. The students are leading with us. The students are planning with us. It's their future. Why not? They need to plan with us, because the moment the students will feel that we are leading them, they will not listen to us. It's human reflex, it's normal. So principals, vice principals are educational leaders. They are leading facilitators. Facilitators are education leaders leading students. The students too, they are the future leaders and today's leaders, leading their own future to be right for today and ready for tomorrow and for a better tomorrow, and leading their own life to continuous success. Again, a student-servant leadership is very, very important. All feel that we are leading, one for all for one. There is one main leader, and that main leader is the student's legacy. The student's legacy, who is at the same time the school's legacy. And of course, we need to reach always, in a student-servant leadership approach, pinnacle level of leadership of John C. Maxwell, the 5 levels of leadership based on respect. Once we reach that pinnacle level, that means we are in the student-servant leadership approach. Now I'm going to give the microphone to our international speaker, Ms. Aline Nassim, to explain to you the other pillars that are needed to simplify the differentiation. Please, Ms. Aline.
Thank you, Mr. John. Welcome to all our fellow educators here. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you all around. To reinforce what Mr. John has already said, differentiation in the classroom, within the 4 walls of our classroom, has proven so far that it's not completely the success that everyone was cheering for in earlier years. Therefore, we have to change the mindset, because it's the mindset that sets us into setting or laying the foundation to getting rid of the teaching environment and replacing it with the facilitating environment, creating it, reinforcing it, maintaining it till we approach or till we get whatever we are targeting for, which is the ultimate goal of differentiation. Definitely, to lay the infrastructure, we have to start with the multi-layered curriculum, because then I am having my classroom curriculum differentiation established. And it focuses mainly on one subject called knowledge. We're not teaching individual subjects. And basically, we shouldn't say we're teaching, we're not facilitating, we're not introducing different or individual subjects. All of them form one entity together. In this way, we are helping our students nurture the learner profile, which is the reflection of our own profile. Thus, when we work together, us as facilitators with our leaders, again, in collaboration with our learners, this is collaborative planning, we develop our universal themes, the themes that are actually in real life, the base of every kind of knowledge. Thus, we create our Bmmi timetables, the big, major, minor ideas, which are the thematic units that we will be discussing over our year altogether. Of course, it will be divided into different plans. Thus, we see here that the students are the ones governing themselves, leaders. When we have them do this, each one addresses the topic or the idea or the theme from his own perspective. This is differentiation. This is how we simplify the approach to differentiation. It's a student-centered classroom. They designed it. They are going to execute it in the way they see it fit for them and for their mates. It's done not within the four walls of our physical classroom. It has to be done outside through Streams project, where technology is definitely a crucial layer. All these are the pillars into simplifying our differentiation strategies when we are facilitating. Thus, this will move us to the next slide, which will tell us that our Streams project are based on the subjects that we usually teach. Right now, our students are following the inquiry-based learning. In this way, if we come up with our topics or project where minimum three of these are there by default, and of course, the more we add, the better it becomes, because in real life, we don't address a certain problem only through one of these. We can see that all of them are intertwined. We walk our learners through this process since the time they are at school. And then when they venture into life, this becomes a simple thing for them to address and approach. Thus, in our Streams project, for me to establish differentiation and make it simple, I should have at least 3 of those into the project itself, where the students do the learning. And this definitely would lead us to the very community that is being created. So as we see, we are aiming to an ultimate goal, which is differentiation by default. If my curriculum is differentiated, and if my collaboration is there, the 2 C's are already established, the outcome will be a community which I am aiming for, the role model learning community with the pillars that simplify differentiation. As you see, we have Classroom Without Borders, definitely, learning centers where the streams, arts, and everything is integrated. I have SOS campuses, the satellite out of school campuses, extracurricular reflective heavens, and satellite learning exploring areas, international virtual combined classrooms. No, definitely when we are reading this, you might think like, how can I implement? What do these all mean? As we progress with our webinar, you will see us, each one of us, implementing this into our lessons as a real life example, just like modeling them for you. Once the 3 C's are established, then the Classroom Without Borders is there, differentiation falls automatically. To sum it all up, what could simplify my differentiation process? I should start number 1 with differentiation by emotion. Establish the love, establish the trust. Let the learners love me as a facilitator, let them trust me. And then they will believe I am granting them the freedom, I'm giving them this access to become the leaders, and I let them lead because I trust them. So in this way, they become the leaders, student-servant leadership, definitely. Using the multi-layered curriculum that was collaboratively designed fixes everything for us. Why? Actually, we spend enough time at the beginning in order to fill in my multi-layered curriculum. But then as we progress through the year, we find out that the hardest job into planning and designing and writing was done right from the very beginning of the year. So if I am done with my multi-layered curriculum, then my yearly plans are 80% of that curriculum. My unit plans form 40% of the multi-layered curriculum. And therefore, we come to the weekly plan now, which are 95% copy-paste from the unit plan. So differentiated plans and approaching the students with trust and love. What do we have? Streams project, integrating all the classroom out of borders strategies. We have to make sure that 25% only is being done within the classroom and 75% is done outside the classroom. And in this way, we simplify the process of differentiation. Now, this is a general overview. We leave the mic now to Mr. Fuad, who's going to walk us into the process of building, constructing the multi-layered curriculum and thus the unit plan. And he will give us one scenario. After Mr. Fuad is done with his scenario, then Mr. John and I will also produce and introduce you to our scenarios, implementing the simple strategies of differentiation. The mic is yours, Mr. Fuad.
Thank you, Mr. Ali. Thank you, Mr. John. Hello to all of you, dear fellow educators. Mr. John and Aline so far have built the theoretical basis for simplifying differentiation. However, in order to have a model that we can follow consistently, a model that will make differentiation both easy and effective time after time, we have to follow a model, as I said, and that model is the CC differentiation model, or curriculum classroom differentiation model. Within this model, all of what we have introduced so far would be integrated and implemented. As its name suggests, CC differentiation model starts with a differentiated curriculum, and moving along, we get to differentiated classes. After we get, so we start with differentiated curriculum, we move along to differentiated yearly plans, unit plans, weekly plans, and eventually we get to differentiated classes. Along the way, we obviously, this is well established, I hope, by now, we should be facilitating and not teaching. Students' input is another very essential element for the effective implementation of this model. Now, to tell you what each of these elements that make up the CC differentiation model, when I say a differentiated curriculum, I'd be referring to the multi-layered curriculum, or MLC. I'll walk you through that in more details in the upcoming slides. The differentiated yearly plans, which are based on the MLC and basically list or includes all the resources needed to implement this multi-layered curriculum, whereas the unit plans and the weekly plans are put together during collaborative planning sessions. When I say collaborative planning, I am not talking about just collaboration among facilitators, but collaboration among facilitators and students as well. During these collaborative planning sessions, also we generate big, major, and minor ideas, BMMIs for short, eventually getting to differentiated classrooms where we can differentiate by content. For example, we can offer the students the option to either read print text or e-text, digital text. We can differentiate by product. For example, when students are involved in streams project, an example of differentiating by a process is using a variety of instructional strategies. An example of differentiating by environment is using or having classrooms without borders. The fifth element, or the fifth pillar of differentiation is differentiation by emotions. Briefly, differentiating by emotions means that the shortest way to the students' minds is their hearts. The upcoming webinar is going to be, not the following one, but in 2 webinars, our topic is going to be the 5 pillars of differentiation, which I have just mentioned. Now, the essentials or the essential elements for the effective implementation of this CC differentiation model are 2. First, themed units. As facilitators, we are used to think or to plan in terms of weeks. For example, we might be thinking, oh, what have we covered this week? What are we going to cover next week? Accordingly, we just put together weekly plans and we think in terms of weeks. The CC differentiation model is built around units and not weeks. So another way of thinking, say, of the yearly plan would be as being a collection of all the units that would be covered during the academic year. All the units put together, you get the yearly plan. That's another way of looking at the yearly plan. Now, of course, each unit plan includes planning for the weeks during which that unit will be covered. Now, how many weeks in particular? It can be anything from anything between 4 and 12 weeks, depending on the unit, depending on what the output of the collaborative planning is, and so on. But on average, it's anything between 4 and 12 weeks. The second essential element for the successful and effective implementation of the CC differentiation model is the BMMIs, the big, major, and minor ideas. Once we have these themed units, we need to cascade them down into big, major, and minor ideas. When does that happen? It happens during collaborative meeting sessions, particularly interdepartmental and intra-departmental meetings. Now, the CC differentiation model, as its name suggests, as I said earlier, is a model that starts with the curriculum in order to get to, a differentiated curriculum in order to get to a differentiated classroom. What is this multi-layered curriculum, this differentiated curriculum? As you can see in front of you, in this pie chart, well, it's a curriculum made up of 13 layers. A curriculum made up of 13 layers. Most of you, I assume, are familiar with just the overt curriculum, the observed curriculum, which is basically the curriculum that has the standards, whether it's the Common Core curriculum, the UK's national curriculum, or any other national curriculum. This multi-layered curriculum, the differentiated curriculum, does not get rid of or does not disregard the overt curriculum or the standards. However, there's more to the curriculum than just standards. There's more to that. There are these 13 layers, including the overt curriculum. They're in no particular order, and they are to be taken as a single unit. So the 13 layers, which I will go over in more details in upcoming slides, are to be taken as a single unit, which is the multi-layered curriculum. Students' input, we have repeatedly emphasized its importance. Why is it so important? Well, when the students are engaged in designing and implementing their learning experience, whether in the classroom, at school, or outside the school, in classroom without borders, such as SOS campuses. They will ensure that their needs are met. They will ensure that the objectives and the instructional strategies are relevant to them. And eventually, intuitively, they will become lifelong learners. So this is the multi-layered curriculum, the first step in or the first element, sorry, in the CC differentiation model. Now, moving on to BMMI timetables, big, major, minor ideas. You're all familiar with the traditional timetable, such as the one that you can see at the left of your screen. A BMMI timetable, on the other hand, which is based on the concept of not having individual subjects, but one subject called knowledge, would look something like what you see at the right side of your screen. Instead of having individual subjects, we just have BMMIs, and for each period, you have the name of the venue where that period or that session will take place. Another thing that we should do with BMMI timetables is, instead of having a timetable, a weekly timetable, we can have daily timetables for facilitators and for students. Something that would look like this, where, of course, at the top you would have the class, the day of the week. Then you'd have, of course, the time slots. Under that, you will have the names of the venues. Then, for each period, you would have the relevant big, major, and minor idea. Now, although most of the times the venue itself implicitly tells us what the period is really about. However, since change should take place progressively and not all at once, a first step would be to move from traditional timetables to BMMI timetables would be to list, as you can see at the bottom of this daily BMMI timetable, would be to name the subjects of each period. Okay. So now I've introduced you. Perhaps you're already familiar with what I've spoken about so far. If you had attended the previous webinars, spoken about the multi-layered curriculum, BMMI timetables. Now, how do we generate these BMMIs, these big, major, and minor ideas? Well, I had mentioned that we do that when we are involved in collaborative planning. Collaborative planning means collaboration between or among facilitators and between facilitators and the students. Planning usually takes place at two levels: intradepartmental and interdepartmental. In the interdepartmental collaborative planning sessions, facilitators would be focusing on horizontal
Mr. Fuad, we cannot hear you. Mr. Fuad, we can't hear you. It seems we lost contact with Mr. Fuad. Mr. Fuad. Mr. Fuad, can you hear us? Hello? Mr. Fuad, can you hear us? Okay, as Mr. Fuad was saying, the intradepartmental meetings, we're going to generate big ideas, and the interdepartmental meetings, again, they will generate the major and minor ideas together. I hope everyone is hearing me. Yes. The big ideas, major and minor ideas. Don't forget that this is a collaborative planning in which the students' input is a crucial. Already, as we said, until now, what did we cover? We covered until now, we are covering one by one all the different pillars that simplify, in general, the CC, the differentiation process. One of them is the multi-layered curriculum, the CC differentiation, the real-life-based learning, one subject called knowledge, student-centered leadership approach, classroom without borders, and we are going to see in our different scenarios, the different unit plans are going to show you one by one. We are going to one by one go through all those pillars one by one and explain it to you so that you understand it's very easy to simplify. Are you back with us, Mr. Fuad, now?
Yes, yes, I apologize.
Continue.
I apologize.
No problem, no problem. Technical problems. I finalized this slide. We can continue with the with the big idea. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So, as Mr. John had mentioned and Ms. Aline earlier, we're going to use scenarios to show you how all of this can be implemented, to show you how simple differentiation can be, how this CC differentiation model and all that goes with it really simplifies differentiation. So in my scenario, the big idea is going to be, can we survive in the 21st century without ICT? The major idea is going to be, to what extent can we preserve and protect our culture, heritage, and identity with ICT integration? Two minor ideas. How does information globalization influence the different trends and horizons of our lives? And the second minor idea being, create an etiquette or protocol for the internet, create an etiquette protocol that reflects the acceptable norms of your society. In my scenario, I'll be focusing only on the big idea, major idea, and the first minor idea. But the same would apply to any other BMMIs. So you have the BMMIs. I've introduced to you what the BMMIs of my scenario are going to be. My scenario will involve 7th graders and their social sciences units. Are these BMMIs related in any way to the overt curriculum, to the standards? Of course they are, and they should be. In my scenario, I will be using, or as an example, of course, the Virginia State Standards of Learning. Mr. John and Ms. Aline later on will be using standards from a different curriculum. This is just to show you that regardless of which curriculum you follow or you adopt, the same is applicable. So the according to the Virginia State Standards of Learning, have the model of having competency goals under which you have standards. For my scenario, the relevant or the applicable competency goals are CE1, CE10, and CE14, which you can see in front of you. I'll just read the competency goals, and you can see the, as I said, the standards in front of you. So the first relevant competency goal is the student will demonstrate skills for historical thinking, geographical analysis, economic decision-making, and responsible citizenship. The second applicable competency goal is CE10. The student will apply social science skills to understand how public policy is made at the local, state, and national levels of government. And the third applicable competency goal is CE14. The student will apply social science skills to understand personal finance and career opportunities. Next. So next is a reminder of just a quick reminder of what the multi-layered curriculum is. You can see the pie chart with its 13 layers. However, it would be very difficult, it would be impossible for me to show you how we can develop or put together our own multi-layered curriculum, having the 13 layers as slices in a pie. Instead, I will be showing them to you as rows with the overt curriculum always on top, just so that you can always make reference to those standards and see how we develop each and every layer of the multi-layered curriculum based on the relevant standards and the BMMIs. So you can see at the top, the overt curriculum, the standards I just spoke about. Then under that, you can see the BMMIs, the big, major, and minor idea. In my scenario, in my scenario, the unit will be covered over a period of 5 weeks, week 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I assumed or presumed that the grade 7 students only would have 1 period of social sciences per week. In other schools, that might be not the case. They might have 2. It doesn't matter. As you'll see in the scenarios that Mr. John and Ms. Aline will present, the units will take longer time and the students will have more than 1 period per week. Again, the same principles apply regardless. So, in addition to the overt curriculum, the first layer, or I should say the second layer in the MLC, relevant to my scenario, is the streams education, where students in groups of 4 or 5 will create the appropriate virtual platform and related resources to run a futuristic job fair. Always keep in mind what the standards are and what the BMMI are, because the layers are relevant to those 2. In that streams project, they will innovate jobs which will be available in 2040 based on predicted technological infrastructure and societal norms. Why in 2040? Because we believe in a real life-based education. In 19 years, our students are going to be either applicants applying to jobs, or they might be employers interviewing applicants. They will conduct, in that streams project, they will conduct job interviews with fictitious applicant, again, real life-based learning, simplifying differentiation, and the victors will be announced based on a specific rubric created by the students themselves prior to starting with their work. Student, servant, leadership. Clubs and curricular activities, the third layer. Students would be involved in IVCCs, International Virtual Combined Classroom, where they would engage in dialogue or conversations with students in schools that are abroad, in other countries. Obviously, technology nowadays easily allows us to do that. At schools, we also have clubs. Students who are members of the ICT club, for instance, would research how ICT has developed over the past decades, and based on that, they'll make informed prediction on how it will continue to develop. Students who are members of the business club at school would experiment the economic effects, the various economic effects of different predicted scenarios on local, regional, and global levels. One subject called knowledge, which is the apogee of horizontal integration. Briefly, since students will be researching, obviously their researching skills would be reinforced, and they'll have to produce some text. So their language skills will also be reinforced, English in this case, English language arts. They will have to, for instance, use appropriate technical vocabulary, and they'll have to proofread their text for syntax, for correct syntax and semantics. The following layer, ICT, a crucial layer in education. We're in the year 2021. Simply, students will resort to the internet for information, and they will use software appropriate to conduct and present the streams project. Which software? It will be up for them to decide. They'll have to do the research or suggest, since they're in a group, in a team, each one would suggest a certain software, eventually deciding on the best one. Next, the education authorities' goals. For this scenario, I chose 4 goals set by the UAE's Ministry of Education that are applicable to this scenario. They're in front of you. There's no need to read them. The following layer is parent-school mutual partnership. And I have to stress that it's parent-school mutual partnership and not collaboration. It's a partnership. How can this partnership take shape in our scenario? Well, parents would encourage and facilitate the access to information, and they will engage with their students in meaningful conversations and dialogues about the topic. Parents can also, whether as individuals or as through the PTA, the Parents Teachers Association, they would collaborate or cooperate with the school in order to facilitate visits to extra scholastic venues, or they can provide the students with any needed resources that the school either does not have or cannot provide. 21st century learner profile and competencies. Based on what the students will be doing in the streams project, they will become more critical and more positive thinkers. They will become they will become better at being team players, because they'll have to work as a team, and they'll become inspired or more inspired and communicative inquirers, because they'll have to, when working as a team, they'll have to communicate. And the 4th applicable competency is international-minded citizen, because they will be working or researching, or the streams project basically is about an issue that faces people all over the world. The next layer, the country's culture and identity. Well, the students will critically reflect on how their country can adapt in face of challenges of the future, particularly when it comes to globalization and influences from other cultures, while still preserving the country's unique identity, heritage, and culture. The next layers, real-life-based education and classrooms without borders. As I've mentioned just a few, or in the previous slide or 2 slides ago, well, the very nature of the streams project is one that is real-life based. It's about something that students will face. So it's not a fictitious scenario, but rather a real-life based one, which they will face sooner or later. Classrooms without borders. First, PRA roadmap. When students reflect their passion to work on a topic that is of relevance to them, of relevance to their real life, they will develop the right attitude. Classrooms without borders, well, this unit will be covered in the classroom, in the International Cultures Center at school, the ICT lab, and the AI lab. Regarding extracurricular activities, the 12th layer, students will work at SOSs, or satellite out of school campuses, and go on international field trips, such as visiting Waupun Village. And finally, vertical integration. Of course, students will build on their prior knowledge, and at once they are done with that unit, once the unit has been completed, of course, they would have acquired new knowledge and skills. So this is how the multi-layered curriculum, my scenario, was developed. I had mentioned earlier that the two elements that are extremely essential for the successful implementation of the CC differentiation model is having themed unit and BMMIs. And I also told you that the CC differentiation model is built on units and not weeks. So how would a differentiated unit plan look like? This is a sample based on the scenario I've introduced. Of course, the heading, you see the unit title, the big, major, minor idea, the class, the subject, one subject called knowledge. We do not believe in individual subjects anymore. Duration, 5 weeks. Under that, you see 6 columns. Of course, the first one stating the number of the week. The second one lists the overt curriculum standards, the standards of the overt curriculum which are applicable to the key learning objective of that session. Remember, in this scenario, students have 1 session per week. In the following scenarios that Mr. John and Ms. Aline will present, we will have something else. I will just read the key learning objectives so that you can see how the implementation of this unit progresses. During the first week, the students will list and describe achievements, entities, and events that enhance the cooperation among peoples and nations. The following week, they will compare and contrast regional and global cooperation related to mutual cultural understanding and respect. During the third and the fourth week, they will evaluate the role of ICT at the level of regional or global cooperation in shaping the future of our lives based on presently available and projected needs. Basically, that's the streams project. And during the final week, they will present and peer evaluate their streams project. Venues and resources, the fourth column, well, it lists where each session or each period will take place. Only 25% of the time should be spent in the classroom. 75% of the time should be spent in classrooms without borders, various venues. Resources needed for each period, you can see them in front of you. Next, you can see the key concepts or vocabulary that students will not just become familiar with, but will master when they're done with this. They would have mastered when they're done with the unit. The last column, which is yet another layer of differentiation, is differentiating for SEN and gifted and talented students. Simply, again, we're talking about the simplicity of differentiation. How can we differentiate for SEN students? We implement IEPs, individualized educational plans, and implement the relevant simplified strategies as per that plan. We can also have high school students play the role of one-to-one shadow teachers, and they do that in exchange for class hours. We as facilitators, if needed, we can also help the SEN students by providing them extra facilitation after school, again using simplified strategies. And we, of course, the SEN department will always be there to provide us with any help in case we would need that. As for the gifted and talented students, of course, they will have a plan. However, the modified strategies and content for the gifted and talented students is called AEP, Advanced Educational Plan. An example of an advanced educational plan applicable to this scenario, to this unit in particular, is, for example, if I have a gifted and talented student in class that's gifted and talented in drama, I'll ask him or her to create a monologue, role play of a fictitious scenario on the influence of futuristic technologies on the life of a person. So this is how, let's say, the first page of a differentiated unit plan would look like. The second page would look something like this. You can see on your right a box, a vertical box, and on your left you see three horizontal boxes. Well, if you look closely, the content of these four boxes are taken verbatim, word for word, from the multi-layered curriculum. What does that mean? It means that since we are going to put time and effort to plan anyway, since all of that is going to have to be done, focus doing that wisely and putting most of our time and most of our effort on developing the multi-layered curriculum saves us a lot of time during the academic year. When can we work on the multi-layered curriculum? Say at the end of the academic year or at the beginning of the academic year prior to students joining the school. So multi-layered curriculum is the basis for all of that. And if you work on that, everything just falls in place. Everything really becomes simple. A high percentage of the work, the planning that needs to be done during the year would have been done already. The second part of the unit plan would be planning for the individual weeks and individual sessions during which that plan will be implemented. I would present to you a simplified unit plan. Simplified plans for the weeks during which the unit will be implemented, and then Mr. John and Ms. Aline will gradually make it more complicated. As you can see under the heading, you have week 1, lesson 1, 50 minutes, the venue, classroom, and the applicable key learning objective. Again, making or simplifying differentiation. Another layer has to be there, the layer of the students' learning styles. That's why you can see 4 types of activities in the classroom: the say, make, write, do. All right, I will immediately jump now into the actual activities that will take place. We will be using, myself, Mr. John, Ms. Aline, the following coding. If you can see at the left side of your screen under say, the learning activity, the code that's used for that is W.1.1.1. Let me explain that. This means that it's the activity for week 1, lesson 1, and it's the first activity for that. So it's the first activity for the first period of the first week. Who is that activity intended for? It's intended for all students. How long will it take? 10 minutes. What will students do during that learning activity? The facilitator asks the students to name famous persons who made it easier for people and nations to get closer and closer away from conflicts. The relevant instructional strategies are Piaget's deductive teaching, fun illusion approach, and PRA roadmap. See how one of the pillars of simplifying differentiation is there, which is facilitating and not teaching. Do I always have to start my classes with a say activity? No. Do I, or should I, as a facilitator, have 4 types of activities, that is say, make, write, do, for every session, it would be preferable. That would be great. However, we should have at least 3 different types of activities per session, per period. In the example that you can see, the second activity is a do activity, the right side of your screen, following the same coding system. It's W.1.1.2, intended for all students. In heterogeneous groups, students watch different short videos about GCC, which is the Gulf Cooperation Council, the Arab League, the United Nations, the International Federation of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, and the Olympic Games. These are organizations and events that enhance cooperation among peoples and nations. And the students will have to prepare a summary. The relevant or the instructional strategies used for this learning activity, fun illusion of approach. Of course, they'll be watching a video. For them, that's fun, right? It's not your typical instruction. So what they think it's fun, but in fact, they're actually learning. And as you can see in the yellow frame, it's a real life-based learning, because they are learning about real entities and real events. Moving to the third activity of that period, on the right, W.1.1.3, it's for all students, however, according to individual roles. In this activity, low achievers in the groups will assume the role of writers and take notes based on input from middle achievers and high achievers to create the summary of the video the group watched. Does that mean that low achievers will be prohibited or will not be allowed to take part in the discussion, the group's discussion to create this summary? Of course not. However, if those low achievers feel that they have nothing to contribute, they shouldn't be left to sit doing nothing. They would assume the role of the writers in the group. The next period, that's week 2, lesson 2, it will take place at the International Cultures Center. Classrooms Without Borders, another pillar of simplified differentiation. As you can see here, my first activity for that period is not a say activity, it's a do activity. It doesn't matter. Briefly, each group will present the summary. Remember, they had to create a summary of the videos they watched. So the groups would, either low achievers or middle achievers will present their summary. Then the second activity would be a make activity, during which students will work in pairs, either low achievers paired with middle achievers or low achievers paired with high achievers. They will have to look up online other achievements or other entities or other events that actually enhance the cooperation among peoples and nations. Sorry, you can see in front of you the applicable or the relevant instructional strategies. And the third activity for that period will be a write activity, during which students will sketch and present in different creative ways, and it will be up to them to decide whether they want to do it using webs, using Prezi, using PowerPoint PowerPoint, a Padlet, or any other method. They will have to create and present the definition of the 2 terms, regional cooperation and international cooperation, and name 2 examples of each. It is very important to highlight what this learning activity also involves. It involves having 2 low achieving students who had previously been trained by the facilitator and had, in collaboration with the facilitator, remember mutual collaborative planning, they had prepared the rubric with him or her. Those 2 low achieving students would evaluate their classmates' work. What are the relevant instructional strategies for this part of the activity? Mutual collaborative planning, between students and facilitators, peer assessment, debating and judging, student-servant leadership approach, which is another pillar that really simplifies differentiation. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed my part. I will pass the microphone back now to Ms. Aline. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Fuad, for walking us through construction of the multi-layered curriculum, the unit plans, and the weekly plans. My scenario, as you can all see from here, now, first of all, I just want to clarify that we are all doing the same, or we're all using the same theme, which is the big idea: can we survive without ICT in the 21st century, for grade 7. Therefore, my scenario, as you can see here, it's based on the standards that come from California Common Core standards pertaining to English language. It could be any language, not necessarily English, but in my case, it's English. The anchor standard that will be targeted here will be production and distribution of writing, research to build and present knowledge. Why did I choose this anchor standard? Because my major idea and minor idea will be precisely this will precisely cater to my major and minor ideas. What was my major idea? The role of ICT. How essential is the role of programming and coding in our daily lives? For this theme, I have come up with minor to minor ideas. And of course, I'm saying I here because I'm speaking on behalf of my team. So minor idea number 1 was conduct an interview with a representative from the Census Department to verify the role of coding in censuses that were generated about the demography of a certain area. The other minor idea was research, the importance of coding to keep an accurate record of healings and deaths as a result of SARS-CoV-19. So as you see, both of them are related to writing and research. The minor idea that I will be developing in my scenario today will be the second one, which is the research. Thus, my performance standards were chosen for this purpose. To conduct such a research, according to W7.7, which is W standing for writing, and W7 means grade 7. It is talking about coming up with a sustained research project based on focused questions, demonstrating the understanding of the subject under investigation. For us to achieve that, excuse me, we need to use technology, internet, in order to produce and to publish the writing while collaborating with the others. For us to do that, definitely we need to gather information, and information is not only gathered from print, it is also gathered from digital resources, bearing in mind the credibility and accuracy of each source. Again, walking our learners through the idea that plagiarism is not acceptable. Finally, producing a clear and coherent writing in which the development organization follows a specific style, which is appropriate to the task and purpose and audience. So this is basically the standards which lay the foundation to my scenario. As Mr. Fuad had already walked us through every single layer in the multi-layered curriculum, there's no need for us to go over them again because they are, as we all follow the same pattern. Now, one thing, just on a different note, we just have to mention this. We don't follow a specific order. We do keep the overt curriculum or the standards right at the top because we're keeping that as our main target of focus as we build on the others. Since I'm delivering writing, my writing will be delivered twice a week. Therefore, this scenario will cover a 5-week span, 10 periods. Every period is 50 minutes. So therefore, 200 minutes are going to be, not 200 minutes, I'm so sorry. It's a period, it's a time period of 10 periods for this scenario. What am I focusing on from my multi-layered curriculum here? The IT as a crucial layer in this scenario will be programming and coding robotics, plus archiving folders and information, creating files, creating database to safeguard and update our records. Now, the same approach is here targeted, where S means substituting, A means augmenting, and M modification. Now, usually, previously, what we used to do with technology is implement those three. But now we are focusing on the R part of SAMR, which is redefining. So we're not eliminating any of those. We're just using technology to redefine its usage. Therefore, the learners will be using coding systems based on sensors. The next layer that I'll be focusing on from the multi-layered curriculum will be, Mr. John, will be the country's culture and identity. Definitely, we're researching a very important and sensitive issue. Thus, my learners have to be aware or keep in mind the nation's culture and traditions, rights, our rights, the people we're investigating with, their rights, the laws in general. What are the laws? What happens in case we violate these laws? What are the penalties? And therefore, when they are gathering all this information, they need to know and take full responsibility of either disclosing it or not, depending on the legal permission or authorization they get from the people they investigate. So this will make them more responsible citizens in our nation or in general. The third layer I'll be focusing on will be parent-school mutual partnership. And we are going to focus on this a bit more because, as Mr. Fuad mentioned earlier, it's not collaboration, it's partnership. So as you are going to see throughout the scenario, my learners are going to spend 75% of their time doing their research and jotting down the notes needed outside the school, Classroom Without Borders. Therefore, they will be visiting hospitals, convention centers, and municipality. How could they have access to that? Here comes the role of the parents with their connections. My learners have to be there. So with the connections of us, definitely, but again, I need my parents to be involved. They will help us into facilitating this process by having their kids taking part-time jobs or volunteering in order to conduct their researches. At the end, that's not the only role played by the parents. They will be also taking part in designing the rubric, the evaluation assessment criteria, which they will evaluate their kids' work. Therefore comes the partnership. The last layer I'll be focusing on here is what happens outside the school, Classroom Without Borders. We know that my learners have to get involved in a real life situation. Thus, they need to know how many people are healing, how many people are dying, what are the consequences, what led to getting contaminated or infected. So therefore, they will be spending their time in SOS campuses, satellite out of school campuses, hospitals, convention centers, taking notes of everything, talking to doctors, nurses, patients, and so on. Others will be in the municipality. They are taking the right count of positive cases. How many PCRs are being done? Where do I have the majority of the infected people, and so on? What happens in case of infractions? When this is done, definitely I have extracurricular activities. These happen after regular normal school hours. AI robotic clubs, art clubs, and science labs. In the science labs, my learners will get to know how rapidly and why does this movement of the virus happen so rapidly due to experiments that will teach them or will help them understand the concept of diffusion, moving from a high concentration area to a low concentration area. In my art club and robotic clubs, here comes the actual work for the research. Now, after doing the research, my learners have to develop a 3D model. It could be a physical 3D model, or it could be a virtual 3D model. Now, what's so lovely about this project is that low achievers, mid achievers, and high achievers all are involved because it's something they're doing, it's practical. So they love robotics, and it's a generation where AI and IT is prevailing. So we don't need to give them lots of instructions. This is the simplicity behind the differentiation because it is there by nature. So they are designing the 3D model, whether it's a physical 3D model or a virtual 3D model, they're using coding and sensors to external stimuli. And this is the fun. High achievers, low achievers, middle achievers are working together. SEN students are involved without feeling the barrier, and the gifted and talented students might go for the virtual 3D model. Now, this is generally what I wanted to focus on. This is the beginning of my differentiated unit plan. Copy paste from the multi-layered curriculum standards at the beginning. The BMMIs are there. Therefore, we have to build on now. No need for us to focus a lot on those. Since my session or my scenario covers 5 weeks, meaning 10 periods, I chunked them into my unit plan in this way. As Mr. Fuad had said, there are 3 activities or 3 learning styles which are differentiated already. Say, make, write, do. Should I cover all these in my same 1 period? Not necessarily. If I can target 2 up to 3, that will be great. If I can cover all of them, that will be ideal. For week 1, a sum of 100 minutes, there are 2 key objectives. So for example, in the first objective, the students have to identify the elements of research according to a specific style, as I mentioned earlier, which is the APA style. And for the second objective, they have to search for reliable, trustworthy websites in order to do their brainstorming. Now, how can I know which objective is done where? Under the say and under the write, you can notice that I have W11, and then under the say, I have W1.1.1, which is the first activity pertaining to the first objective during the first week. And thus, under the right, I have W112, which is that's the second activity pertaining to the first objective. Now, what happens is this. They are both done in parallel, which means while my students or learners are being divided into groups of 4 heterogeneous groups, 1 high achiever, 2 middle achievers, and 1 low achiever, they will be completing the task in this way, researching or finding the components of the APA style. While they are doing this in groups of 4, the low achievers and the middle achievers are jotting down the notes in a roundtable discussion, and the presenter will be the high achiever. Now, if I move to the second objective, which is during the second period, I will see that I started with the do part because here, these heterogeneous groups are now searching for the right websites where they could take their information and they start taking notes. Now, when I move to the make part, I can see that my group, which is made of 4, are taking down notes, but every pair is responsible for specific notes, including the website as referencing and citation. Now, what are the pillars that we are using here? Facilitating, not teaching, definitely. And student servant leadership. I have roundtable discussions. The students are leading everything. I only pitch in when I am needed. They know how to surf the internet. They know how to find the information. They are thinking they're having fun because I'm not involved. I have fun illusion approach, think, pair, share, passion, relevance, and attitude roadmap. It's a real life-based learning education. This is a topic they are all facing. It's a problem we're all facing, so it's real. They have passion for it. It has some relevance, so therefore they develop the right attitude to target it. This is during week 1. What happens during the rest of the weeks? During week 2 and 3, I just merged them together here because this is the actual differentiation. Only 1 period here happens at school. The rest happen at SOS campuses, hospitals, convention centers, and municipality. As I mentioned earlier, my groups are made of 4 members. 1 high achiever, 2 middle achiever, and 1 low achiever. Now, these are all where they are going to go into their stations, and there they will be having a set of questions, and they will write down all the notes. Just for us to clarify this, those that are in SOS campuses are actually doing a part-time job. So they might be paid for it. And therefore, this is a job. How better can I learn about something if it's not through a job, a task given to me? So this is a real life experience, experimenting. They're in the field, they're witnessing, they are involved in the action taken. They are taking everything that's happening there, recording, filming when it's permitted, of course. So again, this is the fun. This is how we simplify differentiation. We make it relevant. Again, as we see, as I mentioned earlier, this is a 200-minute period, 2 weeks, 4 periods, which means 3 periods are outside. During the last period, I will have now the 4 members of the heterogeneous group are split into 2. 1 pair stays in the SOS campuses, and the other pair comes to school to start building the 3D model, whether it's virtually or physically done. Any missing detail in school campus, they will communicate with their friends in order to get whatever missing pieces are there. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle, just putting the pieces in the right places. Again, what does this reflect? Student-servant leadership approach, a pillar in simplifying differentiation. Once school hours are over, those 4 members meet after school to check what is there needed to be made again or added. So what we see over here is perfect collaboration. Parents get involved at this stage too, because during the last period, which are 4 periods, they come in order to check what the kids have been doing, and then together they build the rubric. When they build the rubric points, low achievers stay with the parents in order to build in the rubric. High achievers and mid achievers go back to their stations to check, is my model now reflecting the elements in the rubric or not? So they try to fix things over there. As we see, this is how we can simplify the differentiation. If this happens, what is the role that I am doing, which is really killing me? Yes, we did the effort at the beginning in the planning, but then they are doing all the execution. So if we implement the right strategy at the beginning, this is how we make or we simplify differentiation. No, we shouldn't avoid any of the pillars. During the last week, which is week 5, what happens? Here, my rubric is developed. My project is ready. It's presentation time. Every team will present his project, plus they will present it using public speaking skills. And now no one will be sad to get to know his evaluation because he got involved into developing the rubric. So he's convinced that what he was being judged on was fair enough. Isn't this what we want in our classrooms? To make education simple and fun and real. So this is my scenario, which is pertaining to language. Now I'll leave the mic to Mr. John, so he would also walk us through art and media, differentiation in art and media. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aline. Thank you, Mr. Fuad. My scenario is a very simple one too, as the other 2 scenarios. I'll go over the videos very fast because already the 2 international speakers, they give you details about the Bmmi timetables and about the multi-layered curriculum and about the different unit plans. The big idea, of course, is always, can we survive without ICT? It's going to be a great 7 film media art session that we have 2 periods per week. Major idea, how can we integrate ICT in our daily life without arts? Minor ideas: can visual art and film survive and overcome the 21st century challenges without using ICT? Another minor idea that we're tackling is, can we integrate ICT in our daily life without possessing the major learner profile skills? Of course, I'm using here the grade 7 Washington State Standards related to the media arts. Anchor standard is generate and conceptualize artistic ideas and work. And you can see the performance standards there. There are 4 performance standards from the Overt Curriculum. And we said the Overt Curriculum is always the basis, the first layer of our multi-layered curriculum. Let me go over fast on our multi-layered curriculum. First, of course, the main here issue I'm going to focus on the multi-layered curriculum is the streams education. Why? Because in this, to reach those standards that I talked about and to reach those BMMIs, the students in groups of 6 must prepare a short movie, 5 to 7 minutes. We're going to give them different scenes of different movies, of course, and they're going to recreate those scenes, a short movie, 5 to 7 minutes, recreated acting, cinematography, everything from zero to even the production portfolio. Okay, they're going to recreate this movie, and to be creative and innovative, they are going to recreate the scene that means, and the scenario based on their real life experience and whatever they witnessed in their real life. So here we have again the real life based education. And the most important here at the end of this 9 weeks that we're going to see of creating this movie and preparing for this movie, the IVCC is going to happen. We're going to have 3 international virtual combined classrooms will be held, okay, in which it will be done by an internal virtual combined film festival with other 2 sister schools, and there will be prizes distributed for the best 5 to 7 movies by the different groups of the 3 sister schools. And plus, of course, they are going to go and participate in the Student Film Festival in Kwan Village, which is an external, let's say, satellite learning exploration area outside their schools. Of course, different clubs and co-curricular activities that are going to be affected. The film club, because the students in the film club, they are going to use Final Cut Pro software for film editing. This will help for them exceeding and reaching the learning outcomes in general and the standards for this scenario. The music club, students will practice how to use GarageBand software for music composition. Cine club, students will watch movies and analyze similar movies. Photo club, students will practice on how to use DSLR cameras. Another layer that I'm going to focus on the multi-layered curriculum is the real-life-based learning. As we said, the student will tackle, redesign, and change the scenario of the selected scene based on their real-life experience, and they will reflect the real-life problems via the short movie of the 5 to 7 minutes that they'll create. The venue is going to be classroom without borders again, different places, and as I said, international virtual combined classrooms. And our students, they will visit in this 9 weeks, and during the year, every 2 weeks, once a week, they will visit the art museum, the film museum of that country, and they will work as one period every 2 weeks. They will work as film museum guides, in which it will help them exceed their learning outcomes and their standards, of course. Another, of course, important layer that I want to focus in this multi-layered curriculum is the one subject called knowledge. In this 9 weeks of film, of art, everything is there. Math is there because the students, and geometry is there. The students are going to acquire engineering skills and math skills. They will prepare the scenes of their movies. ICT is there. They're going to use many softwares to edit. They're going to use the camera technology. They're going to use software to create the music of that movie. Culture is there because selected scenes of those movies are going to reflect the country's culture. Music is there. They're going to use generic music. English is there. They're going to reinforce writing skills by writing scenarios and dialogues. Again, English is there too. They're going to reinforce research and writing skills by preparing the production portfolio. Every movie has a production portfolio in which they explain how they prepared the movie for this movie. And life skills is there, of course, and students in leadership, the team spirit. Extracurricular, as we said, are going to participate at the end in an internal online virtual film festival with other 2 sister schools. And at the same time, they will participate later to an external film festival. They'll present there in Kwan Village, a student film festival in which they're going to present the movies. So extracurricular activities is there. And plus, of course, parents-community partnership is very important here because we need adults to act in these movies. So the parents will be the comparse, the extras, the actors, and parents or hosts will help the students to prepare the scenes prop preparation. So I want to go now to my unit plan. The unit plan, of course, again, we always have the standard at the beginning, the big, major, minor ideas. In this case, I'm going to have, as you see, 9 weeks, week 2 to week 10, number of periods, 18 periods. So I'm going to show you now if it's 18 periods and it's 9 weeks, again, it's going to be a unit plan. As Mr. Fuad mentioned earlier, it can be a unit plan covering from 4 weeks to 12 weeks. In this case, it's covering 9 weeks. Week 2, learning objectives is very simple. They need to understand the different camera angles of the different three and understand 3 film genres that are Western, film noir, and drama. How I'm going to do that? Again, say, make, write, do. The learning styles, the different approaches, and different instructional strategies. For example, week 2, first, 2 low achievers and 1 gifted talented student trained previously by the facilitator, okay, they are trained, will impersonate the 3 genres, Western, film noir, and drama. If you notice, 2 low achievers and 1 gifted talented. Already here, I'm differentiating, okay? Of course, they will explain for the whole class those 3 genres, and along with different basic camera angles used, followed by the question and answer session. Everything is there. Question and answer session, shadow teaching, role play, raft, and the venue, of course, the school auditorium. Don't forget, Classroom Without Borders is a major simplifier of differentiation. That's why students must spend 75% of their time outside their classroom. How can you keep them in those classrooms 8 hours a week and you expect from them to be creative and innovative? It's almost impossible. Then another activity, a right activity. In this case, it's going to have 2 groups. The first group, the low achievers, grouped in 4 groups of 4, will watch 3 movie scenes related to the 3 genres, okay? And I will give them a prepared portfolio with some fill in the blanks. They will fill in the blanks, the names of the characters, how many camera angles are there with different types of camera angles. This is a writing activity for the low achievers. In parallel, there will be a making activity for the high achievers. The high achievers will not fill in the blanks. They will prepare the production portfolio by themselves while watching those 3 movie scenes. And then I'm going to go to flexible grouping in a do activity in which 5 groups of 6 students each will role play those 3 scenes of the selected movies, 1 scene per group, making sure that all 3 scenes are selected at least once. Of course, here I have flexible grouping and I have also debating and judging. Why? Because at the end, 2 low achievers, 1 gifted talented, 1 SEN student, as you see, full inclusion. Gifted talented and SEN are fully included within all learning and facilitating activities. We previously prepared a rubric for this purpose with the facilitators will assess the role plays. I am now finished with my second week. I will go to my 3rd and 4th week, as you see here. I am going to go briefly to the 3rd and 4th week. In this, they will continue interpreting the film, film noir, Western and drama genres. Within a critical context, they will manipulate the major camera angles. They will explore and understand the requirements to participate in the film festival. They will go 1 period to their SOS campus and work there as a museum guides. They will edit and manipulate many samples of different scenarios, extracts for the 3 genres. They will edit and manipulate many samples of different production portfolios. They will edit different shots using the DSLR cameras, using the Final Cut software, editing software, the music software, GarageBand. They will practice different camera angles in different stream projects. Now we go to week 5, week 6, week 7. What's going to happen in week 6 and week 5 and 7? Already here, the objective is they are going to create their scenario and they are going to create their short movie. Here, I'm going to choose much more difficult, a little bit high level 5 movie scenes that are going to be linked to the three genres: Western, the film noir, and drama. First, for all the students, prior to this activity of the the three major schools, me and the two other schools, okay, we are going to gather in an online meeting in which 60 students, 1 gifted talented, 2 SEN, and 3 low achievers from all those 3 schools are going to be trained by the facilitators in a combined international virtual combined classroom, and the 2 other schools on the 5 selected movie scenes. Later on, in every school by itself, 1 or 2 students that are from that school are going to analyze those 5 scenes and do a presentation and explain it to the whole class. Afterwards, of course, there will be a question and answer session. This is week 5. Week 5, second period, all students will go to their SOS campus and work as museum guides, make activity. Now I am in week 6. Week 6 already for all, okay? What's going to happen? I'm going to do my 5 groups, my final 5 groups of 60 students that they're going to present and prepare the script and the short movie will be formed, okay? And what's going to happen is that the high achievers and the parents are going to help the low and middle achievers in preparing all the props of all the scenes in different areas of the schools, classroom without borders. Now, week 6, second activity, it's going to perform and conduct by low and middle achievers. It's going to be a do activity in which 20 students, low achievers and middle achievers, in groups of 4 will role play those 5 scenes of selected movies in front of the whole class. 10 students, 2 SEN, 2 gifted talented, and 6 high achievers will prepare a rubric prepared already to assess the role plays with before the class, and then they will assess the role plays and conduct it, and then there will be a discussion and see what was the grading, why they assessed it low, why high. They will talk. It's RAFT, shadow teaching, same make I do, homogeneous grouping, collaborative mutual planning, streams education, one subject of knowledge, foundation approach, venue, auditorium, breakout space, classroom without borders, collaborative mutual planning, all this, of course, the simplifiers of differentiation. Week 7, for all students, the 6 groups of students will prepare the production portfolio and the scenario of their short movie. They will change it, of course, to be creative and innovative based on reverse engineering techniques. Now I am done with week 5, 6, 7. I will go to my weeks 8 and 9. Weeks 8 and 9, of course, I'm continuing preparing my short movie. I'm continuing preparing my script for this movie, my production portfolio for this movie. First, in week 8, the first activity, it will be having in parallel, make, write, do. Why? Working within 6 heterogeneous groups, 1 student from every group will direct the scenes and will play the role of director, making. 1 student from every group will check and edit the scenario and will play the role of script controller, writing. Doing. 1 student from every group will film using the camera and play the role of the cinematographer. 1 student, again doing, will play the role of sound engineer and then music editor. 1, 2 students and parents will act, and 1 student will play the role of the movie editor using Final Cut Pro. Without forgetting that there will be a period during week 8 and 9 that the students will go to their SOS campus and work as guides. Again, I am using here facilitating, not teaching, RAFT, streams education, real-life based learning, one subject taught knowledge, classroom without borders, all of them simplifiers of differentiation. Now, week 10. What's going to happen in week 10? It's time for action, the last week in this unit plan. Say activity. 3 SEN students will be assigned by the facilitators as the 3 masters of ceremony, because what's going to happen is going to happen an online internal with the other two schools, an online internal film festival, where all those students will present their movies. So 3 SEN students assigned by facilitators, trained by him, will be the 3 masters of ceremony, 1 student from every school. Making and writing, in this case, it's going to be for high achievers. 6 high achievers and 4 gifted and talented from the 3 schools will be assigned as judges. They will meet with the 3 facilitators prior, and they will prepare the rubric. So the judges are going to be 10 students from the 3 different schools and 2 and 3 facilitators. Doing, for low and middle achievers, 5 students from every group will present via a PowerPoint their production and then their movie, and then the others will judge, and then the victors will be awarded. It's all there. IVCC, Classroom Without Borders, facilitating, fun illusion approach, PRA roadmap. They think they're having fun, but in real life, they are acquiring knowledge and skills. And then the victors will be awarded. This is my scenario. As you see, dear colleagues, dear educators, you can simplify differentiation by adopting the student-centered leadership approach, facilitating, not teaching, classroom without borders, CC differentiation, multi-layered curriculums, Bmmi timetables, one subject taught knowledge, real-life-based streams education, and mutual collaborative planning. Once you prepare your multi-layered curriculum, then it's easy for you. The unit plan is only 40% of your multi-layered curriculum. The yearly plan already is 80% of your multi-layered curriculum. The weekly plan is 95% of your unit plan. You must care for your student, of course. The multi-layered curriculum, caring for student, streams project, classroom without borders, all this will take you to simplifying the process of differentiation. Now I'm going to just show you what are going to be our upcoming webinars and live discussions. On May 8th, again, there will be a live discussion with the international educator, Ms. Duke Powers, on parent-school mutual partnership, a crucial layer education. On May 15, we're going to have a webinar, the different layers of the multi-layered curriculum. On June 5, live discussion with the International Educator Director of EdUnion, Mr. Sean Hughes, on facilitating English through drama. On June 19, a webinar, the 5 pillars of differentiation, and focusing mainly on differentiation by emotion. On June 26, live discussion with the international art and culture philanthropist, Mr. Gian Domenico Padovan. And on July 10, live discussion with the international knowledge and adventure-based educator, Mr. Colin Wildy, on topic adventure-based education, a major pillar of the 21st century education. Again, a special thanks, we can register via LinkedIn and WeChat, of course, to One Kwan Village, being an art and culture international hub, education international hub, to serve all educators in the world and help them in their sacred mission of education. And special thanks to our international great speakers, Ms. Aline Nassim and Mr. Fuad Sila. And special thanks for you for attending our webinars